So Bros Nation, it's your boy McCash once again. Got a special guest with me today. This is like a fangirl moment for me. 24 years ago, one of the scariest movies ever came out. And I get the opportunity to interview one of those directors, Mr. Eduardo Sanchez. The movie I'm talking about is The Blair Witch Project, but we're not here to talk about that today. We're going to talk about the new film he's got coming out. So, Mr. Sanchez, how are you today?
I'm good, Steven. Thanks for having me on, man.
It's a pleasure. You have a new film coming out, Satanic Hispanics, coming
Yeah.
out September 14th. Why don't you tell all the fine folks what his Satanic Hispanics is all about?
Well, I wish somebody would explain it to me because it's no, it's a anthology movie. It's basically Latino centric, Latino filmmakers. We tried to, as many Latino actors and writers and, trying to, just mix it up. And it's an anthology movie that was done by 5 different directors, and it's it's a lot of fun. They gave us very wide artistic kind of margins, that we could do whatever we wanted. And I think all the filmmakers like dug deep and kind of brought something very close to their hearts to life. And it's just a fun movie. It's like a kind of a little bit like a roller coaster ride, and it has a bunch of different tastes, which is the main thing that I love about it, is that it gives you a lot of different horror tastes in one movie. And I think audiences have been digging it, and I'm hoping that when it goes out that people really respond to it. So
Yeah, I dug it as well. And you're
thanks.
right when you say roller coaster. It starts out. So there's a lot of questions in the beginning, like what's going on, and
Yeah.
then you go chapter to chapter to chapter, and each chapter is completely different in the vibe of horror that is given out. You
Yeah.
have some gore fest, you have comedy, obviously.
Yeah.
It's just all over the map, and it's if you're somebody who's a fan of different genres of horror, this is a perfect film for you.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think that like it wasn't planned that way, like I think
Okay.
that we were kind of given, again, like I think that when you give artists and you give filmmakers a little bit of, freedom, it just somehow, and I've been involved in other anthologies the same way, like somehow the stories just kind of just play together. And that Mike Mendez and Alejandro Brujes, who they were the main producers, and Mike did The Traveler, which is the one that kind of connects all the stories. I mean, they did, especially Mike, he did a lot of work, writing the script and kind of making, matching the edit to our movies. But so it's really a testament to him and to Alejandro how they planned it. But it was like one of those things where like you give people freedom and it just somehow works out. And I think that we wanted to give as many flavors as we could, and I think we succeeded.
Absolutely. Now you talk about the freedom you and the other directors that you had. Did you and the other directors ever, come together, be like, "Hey, what are you doing? I need some help with this," and vice versa, or anything like that?
We did come together, but it was mostly just like, organizational, like, all right, we're going to do this, and I'm going to be able to maybe shoot at this time, and I can't shoot until this day, and this, and then what, and then the stories, like what stories, all right, we'll get your script to you, as soon as possible, or an idea. And it started, it started just with like little basic one-liners about what each person wanted to do. And again, I think the main thing for me was the idea that like I could do whatever I wanted. And I've been doing a lot of television lately, and it's mostly drama and some horror, and I rarely get to do like a real comedy, so it was an opportunity for me to do something different. And I kind of played with everything. I was going to do like a very serious film, creepier, scarier. And then the idea for El Vampiro came across my desk and across my computer, and I was like, oh my God, this is great. And I, immediately thought of Hemke Madera, who I had worked with before. And that was really the main thing for me, was like being able to like build something with Hemke, and something that, again, like, showed off the Latino-ness of all of us, but is a universal story that anybody could attach themselves to. You know what I'm saying? It's this, this movie obviously is not just for Hispanics. I think it's for horror fans.
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned Hemke, excuse me, while watching the film, and I see him for the first time. I'm like, I've seen this guy somewhere a million
Yeah,
times. I just know I have. So I had to
yeah,
cheat, look at his IMDb, and I realized, oh, I know him from Weeds, and I know him from Queen of the South. But he's been in so much.
yeah,
And I have to be honest, the vampire character as a whole is not one of my favorites in the genre of horror overall,
yeah,
because it's just been overdone.
yeah.
But I've never seen it in a comedic aspect like that, and his performance just had me rolling the whole time he was on. And essentially, his take of, or your take really, of the vampire story was a true love story between him and his partner, and how she was really more in charge than he was. I just thought it was well done. So
Well,
congratulations, sir.
thank you, man. Thank you. I mean, the that was really what kind of got, what I love about the story is the idea that like it is a love story at the end, and I don't get to do many love stories, in horror,
No.
and I felt that like I knew Hemke was going to be able to bring it, and then we were casting the wife. We were talking to other people, and he was like, "What about I know this actress named Patricia Velasquez," and I was like, "Oh my god, yeah!" And so he sent her the script, and she agreed. And I never didn't know her. I was a fan of her work, but and the fact that Henke told me we're friends, we haven't really worked together very much, but we've been friends for a long time, and I was like, that might be what we need to have like that instant kind of chemistry. And yeah, man, like I think that I definitely wanted to bring in some it's kind of a universal story of like marriage. People start taking each other for granted, but I was like, imagine if you're married for 100 years, 150 years, where that could reach. So, and they fell into it immediately, like perfectly. But again, I wanted the end to be sweet and kind of like tender, and it's very hard to do that in a horror movie. You know what I mean? Like that's not
Yes.
what usually where horror movies take you. And I was just really happy that they just turned in this performance, and that just like again, like really touched me, and I think touching people. And I love that. I love the idea that like you can kind of end this violent and crazy vampire comedy with like a very tender moment like that. I thought it was special.
I I very much agree. So you mentioned earlier that the character of the traveler kind of moves the movie around and glues all the chapters together.
Yeah.
And the traveler's played by Efren Ramirez, who you might not recognize that name if you're listening, but you definitely know the actor. He's
Oh
better known
yeah.
as Pedro from Napoleon Dynamite. I've never seen him in a role like this before, but man, did he deliver.
Yeah, man.
What are your thoughts on his performance?
I mean, dude, all the performances are great, but he in general, I think, is going to surprise a lot of people because unfortunately he hasn't gotten a lot of work after, Napoleon Dynamite, you know what I mean? And that, I mean, that movie is just such a classic, and all the characters in that movie are such classic, and they've kind of like, I understand how it would be hard to kind of break out of that that stereotype, or that that it's again, it's I think all the actors from that movie have kind of like had to kind of break out of the ones that have been successful had to break out of their that role, those roles, because again they were so iconic. But I think that's part of the fun of this movie, man, is that it's like, oh, it's Pedro, but man, you ain't seen Pedro like this.
No.
He's a badass. And I hope, like, I was talking to somebody else about maybe if this is successful, we'll do a sequel. And it might be cool to bring him, if he's cool with it, bring him back and have another set of films introduced by the traveler in a different way. But I think it'd be cool to bring him back. It'd be nice to bring in other filmmakers, like to kind of see other, just see the work of other Latino filmmakers, I think, to bring in there into the mix. But it would be cool to kind of base it on the traveler. But we'll see what happens. I mean, it's Mike's invention, so he'd have to like figure it out and orchestrate that, help write it. But it would be a cool little part two. I think there's still a lot more of these wacky stories to tell, that's for sure.
There's so much more that can be told. The movie kind of leaves it up to where there could be a possible sequel, and we need everybody to go to the theater September 14th to see it live in person. It helps kick off Hispanic Heritage Month as well. It's just great. With that said, did you get to choose what part you were going to direct, or was it just like, hey, this is for you?
You mean like the slot or the
Yeah,
idea?
or the piece of material.
No, I mean it was definitely up to us, like we definitely that was part of like the appeal, is like, oh, I can do whatever I want. And I think that's kind of the appeal of most of these anthologies, is that they're very low budget, but at least you can do something crazy that you haven't done in a while. And I'm in TV, so I do a lot of horror and drama, and so for me it was like a great opportunity to to do something different. But no, that was one thing that was great about that, is that they did let us basically have any the freedom, as long as it was a horror movie and it has obviously some kind of Hispanic connection to it. They were kind of whatever you want to do, let's do it.
Good. Well, I don't want to take a lot of your time. I know you've got a busy day. Let me. I would be doing myself a misjustice if I didn't ask at least one Blair Witch question before we got out of here. It's 24 years later. I host a podcast called Drinking With, which is all about movies that are turning 21 years old that year. They're legal drinking age. Obviously, Blair Witch is already over the age of 21. Yeah. But with that said, during the production, during the promotion of the film, was there a go-to drink you, the cast, the rest of the crew always went back to, or was there a Blair Witch themed drink that you have in mind?
No, I mean, no, man. I mean, for me, it's always been like, I'm like, I've had an aversion to alcohol since after high school.
Oh.
And so I basically, like, all I drink is light beer, mostly. So for me, it was definitely Corona Light. That was the beer of choice. Has been my beer choice for many years. But you know what? The Blair Witch, there weren't like any, I mean, heavy drinkers. Like, it was very much, very controlled, even though the rap party did get a little crazy and there was a lot of drinking. No, I'd say that the theme of Blair Witch was, power bars and water, because that's pretty much all we gave them, at the end, especially. So no, I wish there was a drink associated with Blair Witch, but there wasn't at all.
That's quite all right. I will say, the first time viewing that movie in the theater, it led me to drink that night because I was scared out of my pants, out of my mind. With that said, Eduardo Sanchez, I thank you so much for joining me here. Again, Satanic Hispanics is in theaters only September 14th to kick off Hispanic Heritage Month. Make sure you click wherever you need to get tickets and go see the movie. Thank you again, sir.
Thank you, Steven. Thanks for the support, man. We definitely appreciate it.
Everybody down! El Paso police!
Hey, why don't you fill me in?
27 dead bodies, all shot in the head. And only one survivor.
I bet he's got one hell of a story to tell.
There are portals back and forth from one realm to the other. Problem is, sometimes the portals don't close once they're open. If I don't leave here within the next 90 minutes, we are all going to be dead.
Siento el palpitar de tu sangre en mis ojos.
Detectives, you have no idea what is coming.
See you in the